Hi, I'm Mal, and welcome to another episode of MiniModelMakes. On today's episode, I'm going to attempt to paint a Nighthaunt Chainrasp. This video has come about because an old friend of mine on Facebook got in touch recently, said him and his kids were enjoying the videos and they'd really like to see a video on how to paint Nighthaunts in particular, so they could have a go at it. So a big hello to Lee, Kirsty, and then the kids at D, Jack and Robin. Robin, yeah, that's it. Almost got it wrong, not quite. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's, as I say, one of my quick ones. It's just how to paint a Chainrasp, as I'm sure you're going to have hundreds of those in your Nighthaunt army. So just a quick job so you can get a unit painted up in an afternoon. Hope you like it. Without further ado, best crack on. Here we go. To paint this Nighthaunt Chainrasp, the paints you will need are Nighthaunt Gloom, Hexwraith Flame, Army Painter Gunmetal, Agrax Earthshade, Nuln Oil, Wraithbone, Pallid Witch Flesh, Gehenna's Gold, Ironbreaker, Balthazar Gold, and Riser Rust. So here we have our Nighthaunt Chainrasp. I've already started to base him, so I'm cheating, you'll have to forgive me for that straight away. And I've undercoated him in Wraithbone. I actually used a spray. You can get Wraithbone in a pot as well. The first thing I'm going to do with this model is I'm going to pick out all the metal, the chains. So for this I'm using my Army Painter Gunmetal. I'm going to quickly go over the blade. Also, I am going to pick out all the chains here. He has, or she has, chained wrists. And that goes to a little ball at the bottom of the base. What I'm going to try and do with this colour scheme essentially is I want it to look like the ropes and chains have been on the floor and then they're almost possessed by a malign entity at the will of Nagash, and they've come back to life to plague the living and exact their revenge. So that's the chains and metal work done on there. I'm just going to tidy that up and let that dry a little bit. And next stage is to do the hilt of the sword. I'm going to use Gehenna's Gold. You don't want the gold looking too bright. Let me just pick out the hilt and the pommel of the sword there. So we're trying to give it a dark appearance. Okay, so I'll pick that out. We'll wait for that to quickly dry and then I'll pick out the next stages. Our next stage is where the fun really begins. This is where we use the Hexwraith Flame to go on this. I turn off between each stage of this. All I'm doing literally is drying the model with a hairdryer. Everyone has a Happy Hobby hairdryer that I know of. It just really speeds up the drying process, enables you to get models done quicker. What I'm doing is putting on the Hexwraith Flame at the top of the model, and then I'm going to drag it down so technically it gets a bit thinner at the base of the model. This is where the undercoat, the Wraithbone undercoat, comes in on its own, because as you can see, it's still showing through the hex wraith flame. And it gives it that otherworldly appearance that we're looking for. Always worth using a palette to control the amount of paint you've got on your brush. What I'm going to do is get into the inside of this model as well, and then drag it down to the bottom of the area so it's sort of thicker at the top, thinner at the bottom. This paint's really thin, so you don't need to water it down. Don't worry too much about getting it on the metal areas as well, because it just gives the areas that kind of, the metal, a bit of the sickly green glow as well, so it adds to the effect of the model. Pretty much covered all of that now. I'm going to let that dry and we'll move on to... So our green has been applied. It actually looks a lot greener on camera than it does in real life on the model. It really does stand out on there. Right, what we want to do now is we're going to use our Nighthaunt Gloom. Very similar to the Hex Wraith Green. It's a technical paint. Pop a bit on the palette. And I'm going to pick out the top. If you look at the model, it's not all one gown. You can see a distinct step here on what's the actual rag is wearing and what is sort of the rest of the spectral apparition, as it were. Okay, so we're going to paint this top area. May need to dry and do a couple of coats for this. We're going to leave the face and also the holes in the cloak, because whatever's underneath this tatty old rag is apparition. Pick out this side. Bit more on the palette. So the green's showing through this a little bit, so after it's dry just pop another coat on this technical paint's nice and thin, so you'll be easily able to build it up. But we're just looking at this top area here and leaving the rest of it underneath. So I'm going to let this dry, just pop another thin coat on there. Okay, his robe is now dry. What we're going to do is add a bit of depth to the non-corporeal parts of him, i.e. the metal and the cloth that we've just painted as well. So we're going to use some Agrax Earthshade. Is going to go on the blade and his or her chains. Some more on there. Turn that round. Now, normally when I'm covering metal with Agrax Earthshade, I'm very careful not to let it pool anywhere, because you can get some quite nasty blotches with it. However, because this is an undead model and this sword has probably been lying around for years on the ground, it's not going to be perfect. So it doesn't really matter if it's a little bit blotchy. In fact, it'll add to the age of the weapon anyway. You know, it'll be a good looking effect. A little bit more Agrax on the palette, and then I can pick out this other chain here. It's just a case of gently dabbing it onto the chain to pick up the detail. You see I'm doing it here quite quickly, but I'm being accurate at the same time. They were prisoners in former lives according to the fluff, so these are the chains that kept them incarcerated. At the same time, now that I've used the agrax on the blade, I'm going to get some Nuln oil. Using it straight, I'm not mixing water or any kind of medium or anything with these. And with the Nuln, it's going over the robe we've just painted. Being very careful because it's a little bit runny. Not to get it onto our spectral areas. What's going into the detail of the robe. It's darkening down the hex wraith gloom paint a little bit as well, which is what we want. Now these models, that you know, they're not going to win Golden Demon. That's not what this painting lesson is about. This is about getting some basic rank and file of what would essentially be a horde unit of your army done incredibly quickly. You could probably polish off a unit of these in an afternoon using this method. And the one thing I've found is, yeah, people do amazingly painted models and stuff, but it's very rare you see a fully painted army. And even at this you know, this standard is good enough to be gaming with at your local store for people to go, wow, look at that full army all painted up, and it looks really cool. I find there's nothing better than someone showing off a fully painted army they've done. It's really good. There we are, that's the cloth picked out on that, so we're going to let that dry now. The Nuln oil and agrax is now dry, and we're going to pick out some of the highlights of the model. So I've got here some pallid witch flesh and to thin it down, and what we're going to do is just pick out on the model the things like the hand, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be too neat with this painting style, because you do want some of the green showing through. We're just giving the model a very, very quick and easy highlight, and as you can see there, it's just making these areas stand out as if there's a bit more substance to these areas. They're not quite ghost, you know, they can grip a weapon. Same again with the hands and fingers there. It just separates it from the glowing apparition of the bottom of its robes, if you understand me. And of course, I've got a lovely, lovely skull here to pick out too. And it's just making it, well, drawing attention to those areas with the most basic highlight. How long has that just taken me for something which normally highlights quite an intricate process, but we're just giving it a quick flash of those areas. The next step now, I am going to use some iron breaker here. It's a well-worn pot this. It's like I've done with the skin. we're going to look at the chains and the little ball here on our model, and we're just going to pick out a few of the links just as a point of light, just making the chain come alive, as it were, drawing the eye to those areas. We can do the same with the blade and the pommel. Really quick. You could almost get away with getting the smallest, tattiest, most horrible brush you've got and dry brushing these areas. You know, it's just a case of take your time, pick the area out. It's not too hard. It's something to enjoy rather than frustrate you. They're the metal areas now picked out on that. The next step. Action. Excuse my hand there. The next step now, I am going to use some iron breaker here. It's a well-worn pot this. It's almost at the end of its life. Get some more soon. Pop a little bit of that on the palette. Some water there. Like I've done with the skin, we're going to look at the chains and the little ball here on our model, and we're just going to pick out a few of the links just as a point of light, just making the chain come alive, as it were, drawing the eye to those areas. We can do the same with the blade and the pommel. Really quick. You could almost get away with getting the smallest, tattiest, most horrible brush you've got and dry brushing these areas. You know, it's just a case of take your time, pick the area out. It's not too hard, really. It's something to enjoy rather than frustrate you. They're the metal areas now picked out on that. Quickly let that dry. It'll only take a few seconds really for that to do, and then we can move on to the next step. We now have the last stage to do on this model. We're going to add a little bit more character to those metal areas again. Okay, now I've got other ways of doing rust. This is just going to be a really quick and easy way of doing it for this. So we've got our model here. He's already looking pretty good. I am going to get some Riser Rust, the oldest, tattiest brush I can find. Get some Riser Rust onto the brush, and then using your piece of tissue paper here, wipe most of it off, and then down the chains and the blade of the weapon, just to give it a kind of pitted, rusted look. Less is more with this, guys, so just tickle it a little bit. As I say, you don't need a lot of this on the brush. And don't spend a lot of time trying to coat every link or anything. You can be a bit haphazard with it. And that is our chain rasp. But there we have it. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll finish off there. I'll wrap up this video. I'll get the turntable out and I'll put this guy on the turntable so you can have a proper look at him. Alright, see you shortly. So there we have it. I've painting tutorial on Nighthaunt chainrasps. As I mentioned before, this video isn't for you to win a golden demon. It's something I'm certainly never going to do, but it's to give you the tools to be able to paint a unit of these. Bear in mind, I gather in a Nighthaunt army you will have loads of these chainrasps floating around. It gives you the tools to paint them really quickly. That can be done in an afternoon, look really good on the tabletop, and give your opponent that wow when you put them out there and you float them along and you start stabbing him with pitted, corroded, horrible blades. So I hope that is really useful to people out there. Please like, subscribe and share. Leave a comment if you've painted some of your Nighthaunt or a photograph of them in the comment section for me, because that would be absolutely amazing to see if someone's followed this scheme out there. That'd be brilliant for me. And Lee, I hope yourself, Dee, Jack and Robin have happy painting using this colour scheme for your Nighthaunts, and hopefully see you soon. I'll get that model put up on the turntable now, along with the other model that I did just to test this painting scheme out. I really enjoyed them. While I've not got a Nighthaunt army in planning stage yet, I may do them at some point in the future, but I've got so many projects on, it's got to be a long time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Bye for now. Take care.